your expectations or your goals are very different when you're planning for this, you're going to struggle. That's the truth. No one person on the face of this earth can provide you happiness. The only person that can provide you happiness is God. Should your spouse make you sad? Of course not. But my point is that they shouldn't be solely responsible for your happiness, where if they are not present or if they're not there, or celebrate yourself. Because there are a lot of things in long distance marriage that's going to make you unhappy if your head is not in the right place. Hello and welcome to Sacred Seasons with Fumi. If today is your first time on this channel or your first time of seeing my face, welcome. It's good to have you here. I know you will like it here. And if you are a returning subscriber, good to see you again. So we started a series on long distance marriage. As we proceed in this series, I feel like I'll start calling it LDM. But anyways, let's put that aside. In my last video, we talked about whether or not long distance is ideal, and our answer was no. But the main question that we wanted to answer was if it was possible to survive long distance marriage. And today we're going further in the conversation by just trying to see what kind of couples, what kind of marriages, or what kind of people can actually survive long distance marriage. Invariably, what that will also mean is that what kind of people will not survive long distance marriage. Now, when you're having these conversations about the kind of marriages that will survive or not, you need to look at a lot of things. One of the things that you need to look at is the meaning that these people give to marriage. The way that you see marriage or the purpose of marriage that you hold will determine your view of long distance marriage. So I'll explain. People have different reasons why they think that people get married. For example, if you are married and I ask you, why are you married? I'm sure I'm going to have like a plethora of reasons why from different people. And even for people that are not married, if I ask them, why do you want to get married? I'm sure I will also have different reasons. And that was one question I was asked by my pastor when I went to tell him that I was going to get married. He asked me that question, why do you want to get married? To be honest, I can't remember specifically what I told him, but that's not what we're talking about. But I'm sure I gave a reason that possibly convinced him or not. But the main point is that we all have different reasons. And people have said over time that they get married for companionship. Some people have said they get married for procreation. Some people for emotional connection. Some people for love. Some people for spiritual reasons. Some people for family ties. You have people getting married for survival. Yes, that's a thing, because now you have stories like now you have things like marrying up in this generation. It is a thing. Initially it used to be ladies marrying up men that are maybe financially or whichever way higher than them. Now it's even everybody. You have the male folk also talking about marrying up. So it is a thing. Some people marry for survival. Some people marry for financial partnership and or any other thing that they have for certain kind of economic partnership. I think that's a better way to put it. Of course, in this world of power couples, where everybody's saying, the husband is so and so CEO, celebrity, and the wife is this CEO. So you have things like power couples. Now, your reason for marriage will determine greatly how you view long distance marriage. If you're someone that is getting married for emotional connection, for love, for physical connection, then if your reason is embedded in relationship, or if your reason is inherently relational, basically, then long distance marriage will be a problem for you, in the sense that physical presence will be very important. But if your reason for marriage is like survival or economic partnership, then you would see long distance marriage as something that you should consider, as in even indefinitely, even though we never encourage that. It's usually temporary or semi-permanently. Now, another thing that can determine whether or not long distance marriage is a thing that you should consider is your love language. I know if you've not heard of love language before, I would not assume that everybody knows what that is. We have 5 love languages, although there have been arguments that there are more than that, but the general one that we know. So if your love language is something like physical touch, or what's this other one where you have to be to get quality time, if those are the kind of love languages that you have, then it might be a lot more difficult for you to navigate or to even consider long distance marriage than other people whose language is like gifts, acts of service, and all of that. It is debatable for acts of service as well, especially if this kind of service that you like are services that will require the physical presence of your husband or wife. So yes, those are some of the things that you should consider. But generally speaking, like I started at the beginning, long distance marriage is not for every kind of couple, it's not for every kind of marriage, and it is not for every kind of person. Number one, if you are a person or a couple that is not a strong communicator, then I think you should either look at it and work on your communication before considering long distance marriage if you absolutely have to do that. What do I mean by a strong communicator? You and your partner do not speak on issues like, there is this communication that is called logistics kind of communication. You talk only when it's absolutely necessary because you're trying to talk about the children, the bills, the important thing for information purpose. That's what your communication style is. If you're that kind of couple, then honestly, don't go to long distance marriage. It is not for you. If you're an avoidant kind of couple, the kind of couples that do not like to sit and actually have conversations about things, there is a misunderstanding. You people want to sweep it under the carpet. You don't want to address the elephant in the room. Long distance marriage is not for you. If you're the kind of couple that cannot speak openly and vulnerably with your spouse, it's going to be very difficult because there are times in long distance marriage where you would need to share emotions. You need to share your fears. You will need to be vulnerable and tell your spouse your challenges, when it comes to this, and you are not able to. And to be honest, I'm not trying to be funny, but most times I feel like it's easier for more women to be vulnerable when it comes to their experiences in long distance marriage than with men, because somehow, and I don't know if it has to do with the kind of men that I've met, African men, Asian men, and all those other kind of people. I believe it might be slightly different when you're talking to people in the Western world. However, there are no guarantees because most times men are sometimes raised to internalize and sort out their issues and just find a way within themselves. Men are not encouraged to be vulnerable, although things are getting a lot better in this generation because we are seeing a lot more vulnerability with men. We're seeing a lot more communication with men. We're seeing a lot more intentionality in marriages when it comes to communication because both parties are beginning to realize, oh, there is a need in this area. We need to address it. And people are learning. People are taking courses in communication. Marriages married people are going for counseling just to learn how to communicate. You know, it will also long distance marriage will also not work for couples that communicate emotionally. Now I know that sounds like a no-brainer, like how do you communicate without your emotions? But the point is that there are people that just from having slight conversations, emotions go high and things are blown out of proportion. Now if you're those kind of people that you don't settle down to actually listen, not just to the words but also as much as possible. I know it's difficult to listen to people's intentions, but you actually listen to more than the words. You listen to the body language, you listen to the non-verbal communication, you listen to the knowledge of the person that you already have. Now, I know this sounds like a lot of things to put into practice, and today is not all about communication, but I'm just saying if your communication is already bad, long distance marriage will make it worse. Now, another couple that would do well, of course, not perfect, but at least they can manage long distance marriage, are couples with high trust. They have a high level of trust and they have low insecurity levels. What that also means is that if trust is an issue, or if one of the people or both are insecure, then you will have a big problem. Because, and the truth is, insecurity and jealousy and all those kind of things, sometimes it's not just because, oh, I'm an insecure person and that's it. People are dealing with real traumas. Some people have become insecure because of previous experiences from previous relationships. I was talking to one of my sisters and she said something that was very profound when we're talking about insecurity. Her insecurity stemmed from even childhood, based on how, daddy treated mommy, or based on how daddy and mommy's marriage turned out. Her insecurity came out from those. So sometimes it's not even about saying, oh, you're always jealous, or why are you always insecure. People have real issues. And if these issues are not properly dealt with, which needs time and a lot of patience, then it's going to be a problem in long distance marriage, where you are suspicious, you are not sure what the other person is doing, you do not respect the person's independence, and different things happening. You read meaning to things. Now, if that is the kind of couple that you are, please, before you start even thinking of long distance marriage, I think you should look into those issues. Look into the roots of those insecurities. Look into the roots of those trust issues. Have you given each other a reason not to trust each other? If that's not the case, what's happening? Why do we have a problem with trust? Has someone broken the trust in the marriage at some point? There are different reasons that we should look at. So yes, if you are a couple that is battling trust issues, then you should not look at long distance marriage yet. I'm saying yet because I know for some couples it looks like, oh, we don't have a choice, we have to, but deal with the issues. You know what I'm talking about. Another kind of couple that should not consider long distance marriage are couples that do not have shared long-term goals. I've heard all kinds of things when it comes to long distance marriage. There are couples that at the beginning, when they sat down to have these conversations of, oh, we're going greener pastures, you're going, I'm staying with the children, and all of that, they did not sit down to iron out or hash out the fine, what they call it now, the fine, to hash out the fine details of what this long distance marriage will be. How long, how often do we see, all those kind of things. So you have people saying, oh yes, we are going on this long distance marriage, we are going to be here for so and so time. You have couples saying, oh, just go first, let's see how it goes. You have different kind of things. So when your expectations or your goals are very different, when you're planning for this, you're going to struggle. That's the truth. I've had where even sometimes it might be that you actually had the same goals at the beginning when you guys decided to do this. And after you people left, the other person is beginning to reconsider and your goals are beginning to change. So sometimes the problem does not even start, before. The problem starts during. And one very good example, that I was given with long distance marriage is two people working together hand in hand. And, just imagine walking through a train track and a train comes and separates them and they are running to the end of the train to meet. By the time they meet, they will definitely not get there at the same pace. So that's the problem. And how do you avoid this problem? Is to keep yourself, make sure you go back to that drawing board from time to time. You need to keep seeing, are we still on the same page? Is this still the plan? Because we have several marriages today where they had shared goals at the beginning, but right now, everybody is just running their own race. Everybody has different ideas of what they should be doing as far as long distance marriage is concerned. Emotionally dependent couples. If you are someone or a marriage where you depend on your spouse for your happiness in life, there's going to be a problem because your emotional state is determined by your spouse. And first of all, let me say that is too much responsibility to put on one person, because no one person on the face of this earth can provide you happiness. The only person that can provide you happiness is God. Should your spouse make you sad? Of course not. But my point is that they shouldn't be solely responsible for your happiness, where if they are not present or if they're not there, or, celebrate yourself. Like the way, I can't remember who talked about marriage, that's saying that it was about two whole people. You must be single, like a full person, before coming together. That's when, marriage works. But anyways, not to digress. So if you're that kind of person because there are a lot of things in long distance marriage that's going to make you unhappy if your head is not in the right place. For example, you call your husband and he's busy at that time and he's unable to pick. And you feel like you need to speak to him at that time. And you don't have an explanation as to why he's not picking. If you are that insecure person that we talked about at the first time, your mind will begin to go in 30 different ways. It doesn't matter whether he has given you reason or not. It doesn't matter whether he has told you 10 times that, oh, if you call me and I don't pick, this and this might be the reason. There is every possibility that you're thinking other things. And that doesn't happen for everybody, but I'm just saying that if you are someone that is very emotional or very emotionally dependent on your spouse, then you might struggle with long distance marriage. Another kind of couple that will struggle with long distance marriage is, how do I even word this? You see couples that don't have this, that don't feel like they have the same stake in the marriage. Like both of you don't feel like stakeholders. You don't bring in the same level of effort. Now, I know we don't, I don't believe in 50-50. I believe that everybody takes what they can per time. Sometimes I bring 80, you bring 20, sometimes you bring 70, I bring 30. It's about working together depending on what's required. But my point is that you must be working together. If you are that kind of couple where one person is doing the heavy lifting, one person is always doing the calling, one person is always doing the updates, one person is always saying, oh, this is what's supposed to happen, then you're going to struggle, because the person that's constantly the one, watering the relationship and doing all the little things that need to be done to keep the marriage going in long distance would eventually get tired. They might get resentful. I actually had a situation where, the wife was becoming very resentful because it looks like if she doesn't call the husband and, he then wouldn't call. And sometimes it's not because maybe the person doesn't love you or doesn't miss you or all of that. It's just that if you are married, you know that couples take themselves for granted a lot, which should not be the case. But I'm sure he took it for granted that my wife will always call. Like my wife will always call. And it got to the point where she got tired, she got resentful, and like, oh, so if I don't do this, then we don't have a marriage. So if I don't do this, then you're not going to make an effort. So you need to understand that with long distance marriage, the effort has to be like, if every other person's effort is like 8, you couple in long distance, you guys have to be like 15, because you have to put in a lot, and you have to put it together so that one person does not feel resentful, and one person does not feel ignored, or one person does not feel taken for granted. Another couple that should or should not should consider long distance marriage are couples with very good conflict resolution management, as in people that understand what leads to conflict and how they come out of it. If you have a healthy conflict resolution management, or you have a healthy way of resolving conflict, then long distance marriage can work for you. But if you're the kind of couple that one small thing like this can easily escalate into something big that you don't even understand where the root of, and to be honest, with long-term marriage, these things can happen easily because of course you're not seeing each other. You're not picking up on each other's non-verbal communications and all those kind of things. Sometimes it's even text. And text can be very funny. Where you're saying one thing, they cannot take the tone, they cannot hear what you're saying or how you're saying it, and this thing will just blow out. So this is something that every marriage should be able to, learn about each other, about the way they resolve conflict and all that. But more so, long distance marriage, you must have a way that you guys resolve conflict. You must have non-negotiables. And I've heard of couples that have non-negotiables, like saying, oh, there was recently, I can't remember, I think she's an influencer or someone, she was saying that the agreement she and her husband has is that they would never threaten each other with a divorce, no matter what is happening. There are people that the non-negotiable is that we would never go to bed angry. Whatever the issue is, we are going to deal with it now. There are people that is that, okay, once there's a misunderstanding, we must verbally have the conversation, no text. There are people that it will be that, oh, once there is a misunderstanding, we some write it, because I've done that, I think earlier in my marriage, where you say, oh, write, you tell the, and then it was because my husband is quite an introvert. So it's more or less like, write what you're feeling, or write what you're, but I don't think we did it for long, maybe once or twice. But I'm just saying there are different things that people do to help them, resolve conflict, basically. And the reason why I think at that time that we did that, or we started doing that, which we didn't do for long, like I said, is because when someone writes everything that they are feeling and you write yours, there's no back and forth of, oh no, that's not what I mean. Oh no, I was saying that, because everybody's writing. No defense. So hold your own, I hold my own, then we'll read, and then maybe later we can then talk about it. But I don't even know why we stopped. But anyways, just do what works for your marriage, as far as conflict resolution is concerned. Another couple that should not consider long distance marriage are low effort couples. Couples that don't think about creativity at all. Like, how can we be creative about our marriage? How can we create? Because you need a lot of creativity with long distance marriage to feel like you are together, even though you are apart. So if you are a low effort couple, you're going to struggle. High effort couples are couples that think up creative ways for communication, creative ways for spending time together, creative ways for even family devotions. You know, I know there was a time we used to do devotions where my husband would join us on phone and we would be doing it physically. So you need creative ways. And am I saying we were this kind of couples? Of course, not all of it. We learned a lot of these things along the way. The last set of couple that I would say should not be considering long distance marriage at this point are newly wedded couples. Yes. And the reason is very simple. You guys you just got married. You're still trying to understand each other. You're still trying to establish routines. You're still trying to establish things around your life. I don't think you should be considering long distance marriage because it might create problems that are so big that you will spend the rest of your marriage addressing. So personally, and I did long distance marriage as a newly married couple, and the challenges, honestly, I don't even want to go into it because it's going to be like an entirely new video. But I personally would say, if you're just getting married, please get to know each other. Please get to understand each other. Please take time to even be together. It's marriage. Start first before you start separating if you have to. And honestly, I'll beg newlywed couples, if it's not necessary, if it's not really important, if it's something you can avoid, let me put it that way, then please avoid it. Yes, I know I've spoken a lot today. I've said so many things. But again, subscribe, like, share this video, share your experiences, turn on the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.